Yeah, let's take a pause here and just have a chat. And I wanna again, I wanna start with Samantha because we've been having issues for the viewers who are watching. Sam's having issues connecting to the game, and that's why she's sitting in with Kevin. So, Sam, I just wanted to find out what are your thoughts so far, if you don't mind.
Um, yeah, no, I think the game, I mean, even though I can't hear it, it's still very good. And just sitting there reading the subtitles, I do like the art style. I think it's cool, the like sort of shift from the pictures to pictures. Um, I also love the cutaway scenes. I like how it's constantly high tension every time we switch from like the characters, and I think they do that pretty flawlessly. It doesn't feel like a weird transition at all. It feels good. It feels like our choices matter too. Because sometimes it feels like,
Yes.
some of these games it can just be like, oh, it doesn't actually play out. I feel like every choice we made actually impacted the story, and we could see it impacting the story, which was really, really neat. So it feels like everything we choose is super important. And then I think the override battle is really cool. I think that was my favorite part, is when you could override someone else's override. That's so cool. I wonder if people keep overriding the override, like how many times can you do that? It's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's what the override battle stat is. It's like every time, like Hark and Joey could have went back and forth there until they were out of overrides. I think is what could have happened.
Could have happened.
Someone could have overridden the truck decision at the beginning.
Yes. Somebody could have overridden Kevin's truck.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Also, by the way, the reason that Elias Tufexis sounds very similar to Caden Alenko is because Elias is from Canada, and so is Caden. They're both
okay.
Canadian.
Yeah, I could have sworn it was Raphael Sabaj when I heard it.
No, Elias has a very steep, gravelly sort of like draw you in kind of accent voice, and like he's sounded like that in every game and every show he's been in. So he's very unique. I know it straight away because he's got a very unique cadence.
I was listening to the dialogue, and I was like, these Arizonians certainly have a very strong Canadian accent, I think.
Well, I think the Arizonians are obviously the people who were stealing the money, and then the people inside the diner.
Inside the hotel.
Everyone else
heard.
wasn't. Yeah.
Still heard quite a bit.
We need to get some more Arizonian voice actors out here. Anyone know any? I enjoyed that.
Is it common for Arizonians to have books on bird watching, or is that a character point? I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it.
Could be. That was fun, though. That was genuinely interesting, because like the fact that there's QuickTime events means that you can't just take your hand off the mouse while there's no choices on screen, which I like, because one of the things I didn't like about Telltale games, at least the early ones, is that it kind of felt like you could take your hand off the mouse for ages and just kind of sit here and listen to things and maybe make a choice here and now and again. But this means that you have to be aware of the fact that at any time a choice can come up on screen with your name on it, and if you don't do it, something will go wrong. Yeah. As we learned there, we might have gotten out scot-free if we had all managed to do the Vase event quickly enough. But I think if more than half the people fail, it fails. Essentially, I think is how it works.
Yeah, I think at certain points, I think it like, unless I misunderstood it, it seems to like at some points just choose a player and go, you need to do this action. So it really keeps you on your toes. I both loved and hated the fact that it took you into the action straight away. I loved it because obviously then it's like it ramps up the stakes very quickly, but also it's like, okay, you're just figuring out the game and stuff's going on, and but I think it's good because with the amount of overrides that they give everybody, they really need to make sure that those decisions feel impactful and that they are decisions that someone would want to override on.
I am very curious about if we'll all have 3 overrides now in the next section, or if it's keeping the same override number and we have to just be okay with getting to the end of the game with that point. Because we could get to like halfway through the game and we could have no overrides left, and one of us could be super passionate about a choice that needs to be made, you know?
Yeah, just in case. That's why I didn't use any overrides. I said to myself, unless it was something I really felt strongly about, because I'm not sure if it's like 3 for the entire game. Which I guess would make sense if they did, because they really want you to like feel strongly when you use an override.
Yeah. That's why I used it at the point where he said that Vince was scared shitless, because I'm like, I don't think Vince is scared shitless. I just think he doesn't want his family to get hurt. That's the only thing I was thinking in that moment.
And I chose to share the family, not because I was scared, it was because I was trying to appeal to his humanity a little bit. To To be like, look, I got a wife, I have a little girl. That was the reason. It wasn't to sell out my family. It was just to try to,
especially with all the family talk. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that was, he misinterpreted why. At least I was trying to say that.
Yeah, which is why I was like, no, I'm not scared of you. I just don't want you to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
You're the one with the gun. It's that simple, really.
So I don't know if this is a bit too serious a topic, so feel free to cut me off if it is, but obviously as I live in the UK, gun violence is not so much a thing here, which kind of influenced how I made those decisions. I don't know if you're supposed to, in those situations, try to appease the attacker, or if you're just supposed to try to run or try to attack. Like, I don't know if there's kind of guidance on that, because obviously I come from a place where that's not necessarily an issue. So I think that will influence people's choices and the decisions that they're making as well, because I don't have that experience.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing it up. That's a good thing to
I'm
bring
also
up,
it's the same thing here though, because like it's the same in most of Europe. Most of Europe doesn't have the same level of gun violence as the States do.
Yeah, only the majority of the people on this playthrough are not in America, and unfortunately America is notoriously known for having gun violence issues. So yeah, no, that's really interesting. How about Joey and Callista and Roma? Presumably is it not as bad supposedly in your areas, like in your...
Well, guns are illegal here also. So like, it's like obviously having grown up in the States, and obviously I still keep up with the news in the States and stuff. It's like, I am aware of that culture of gun violence, but it's like, it is strange for me here to see children going to school with like these toy guns that look very realistic. I know they're not real because guns are illegal here, but no one really bats an eye when someone sees that. Or even something like let's say like a box cutter type tool just to sharpen their pencils. In America, that would definitely not fly, but here it's just so normal. And seeing that kind of thing I've been here 10 years and it still shocks me when I see that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's in Belgium. It's quite hard to it's kind of illegal, I guess. Yeah, but it's every now and then you hear that. Yeah, there are options to get them eventually. Just you have to find. Yeah, you have to look hard, but it's it happens, but not as it's not legal like in America.
I'm in the UK too, same as Hannah and Mikey. So it's just the thing, like seeing a gun being waved in someone's face. I'm just like, this is not something I see every day. Like,
I have a small amount of de-escalation training because of working security, and they always tell you that if someone comes into a store with a weapon, usually in my case they tell you it's going to be like a tool, like a hammer, a screwdriver, something of that nature. Like, they're not going to walk in with a gun usually. If they walk in with a gun, this all applies double. You give them what they want. If they want money out of the register, you give them all the money. You don't fight them. You don't give any kind of lip. You do what they tell you to do, and you hope to get out of it with your life and unharmed. And hey, money's replaceable, all that sort of stuff. It's not worth my life or anyone else's life. Whatever's in the till or registry, just give that money out. That money's insured. It doesn't matter. So that's why when he asked Vince for where is there anyone else here, I was like, just tell him where your family is, because he's going to find out eventually anyway.
And if you didn't say, then it's going to be double and worse.
Yep.
Yeah, unless
Really
the thing they're asking is that they're going to take your wife, then things change, of course. Like we saw.
I'm curious about everyone's mindset. I wasn't one of the ones who chose this option, but I'm curious what the majority of people were thinking. Not what you were thinking. I'm sorry, that came out wrong.
What were you thinking?
What were you? You dummies? No. I want to I'm just curious about the mindset behind putting the gun down at first. Like when he first got the shotgun and then he put the gun down. Like, I'm curious what was the reasoning for that, because my reasoning was, no, I'm not going to put the gun down, because when people are aggressive, that means you've deprived yourself of a possible another method of self-defense, you know. So sure this lady has a gun on them, but having two guns is better than one in this case.
Yeah. I think for taking from Mikey's point, I think it was de-escalation for me.
Yep.
It was that I didn't want to aggravate the people that were threatening us, and obviously there was more than that one individual that we were pointing the gun at. So I guess it was to try to de-escalate so that it didn't aggravate the attacker.
Show cooperation as well.
That was kind of my strategy, because I was trying to collect data. I was going to see, can I reason with these people at any point? Do they have some humanity that I can appeal to? If I show them that, you know, hey, I'm willing to play nice and be as diplomatic as possible, I'm willing to listen to you, like trying to see how they react. But then if they seem like they're just going to be waving the gun around at my wife's face and like threaten to like kill my family anyway, then it's like, okay, then all bets are off. I'm like, okay, you clearly can't be reasoned with.
If we had ended up like messing up that quick time event and the dog got away and they shot the dog, all bets would have gone off. All bets would have gone off in my case. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. So I was trying to like, because ideally I would like to try to get through this as peacefully and as painlessly as possible. But if they're not showing any indication that they're willing to play ball, then I'm like, okay, well, you crossed the line. So I tried to play nice, and so now you're not willing to play by the rules, so I'm gonna shoot you.
Well,
I'm sorry.
as you put it, Hark, they made the bed, now they gotta lay in it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like I gave you many chances to like I said, I gave you many chances for this to not to escalate, and you're just not taking it. You're not meeting me halfway, so yeah, I
do wonder if we eventually hit space here or not. I wonder if the next thing we see is just the shotgun go off, or if the shotgun goes off, but he only had one shell in it or something.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. There's been one shot fired already, the grounds. So I was thinking, is it one or two shot?
Well, it's a double barrel, but we don't know if he put two shells in it, because we don't know if he would have done that or not.
Yeah.
So.
I reckon it's going to open on a funeral. I reckon we're gonna have a time skip or something, and it's gonna be like either the guy who we shot, and you know his brothers being like, I can't believe they shot him, or potentially the mums with Zoe saying, why did you shoot that man, Daddy? They shot Mommy, like, and we're just gonna be like, the guilt. The guilt.
Yeah.
The guilt.
I do really wonder how much what we're doing is going to influence our child, because they're seeing all of this.
All of a sudden, this has become very Walking Dead season 1 and weirdly.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't heard much from Kevin. Kevin, do you want to share your thoughts about anything at all about the game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, reiterating what everyone said. Especially the quick time events. I really enjoy those because, like the Walking Dead season 1, where you can kind of just relax, and you kind of, I tend to like tune out after a while, where this, it's like you have to focus, you have to pay attention to everything that's going on, and it really pulls you into the story.
Kevin, swipe left. Kevin.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then the choices that are being presented, I feel like at first we were just kind of like, oh yeah, this will be fun, and then very quickly it was like, oh crap, like this just escalated infinitely, and it's been a lot of fun.
I love the storytelling of this game. I think they pace everything really well. They're really good about throwing a lot of curveballs at you and really making you stop and think about, like, how would you react to this situation. Like, I think that one of the ones that really hit me very quickly, high impactfully, was when I opened that door and I saw the sheriff's wife, like, in the wheelchair, and then you learn later she has, like, the tracheometry, and I'm like, it's such a, I don't know if we're ever going to see that character again, but it's just a great example of how to make really good use of a really cool and interesting character in a very like high stakes situation. You know, even if they're only in like whatever that was, a 5-minute scene. Like, it was a very cool like quality over quantity type of storytelling, which is something I try to do in my campaigns, for example. I try to do stuff like that, so I definitely applaud them for that. And I'm just very, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm impressed by with this story is just how great the storytelling in is, and how I feel a lot of emotions and a lot of tensions, and you know, it's awesome. Yeah.
I was a really big fan of the flashback. It was amazingly done. Yeah. And the fact that they keep us on edge 24/7, because at every point in time, you could become the one who has to put in the inputs.
Yeah.
So it gives you the stress that the people in the scene have as well, which is really cool.
I have a question for all of you. When you're making your choices, are you making your choices because you personally, out of character, would make those choices, or because you're trying to role play the character that's making that choice? Because I feel like you could probably play it in many different ways. So I'm just curious how everybody's approach is.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to play it as the Vince in my head. Like this, like I'm trying to play it as my version of Vince, because obviously everyone in this call has a different version of Vince in their head.
Yeah.
Like obviously some people were saying that they were just going to admit to the guy that they're scared. But I'm like, I don't think Vince is scared. My version of Vince isn't scared. He just wants his family to be okay. And he knows that if these guys catch his family sneaking around or whatever, they're going to get hurt. So just tell them out now. So that way that won't happen. So I felt like that was my reasoning for why I try to play Vince the way I do.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same for me. But on that decision, what I was thinking was that Vince wouldn't try to like challenge him, because that could escalate it again if he's a not very stable kind of person mentally. So then, just getting into an argument, fighting over the fact that you're brave wasn't really worth it at that point, because his family was still in danger.
I think for me, I was making choices based on what I would do in that situation, because that was the one, because you have such a short window to make the decision, it's quicker kind of cognitively for me to think, what would I do? Just because of the time limit. Because I think there's one or two choices that timed out for me because I was thinking about it. The only exception was anything related to the dog, because I did not want to cry on the very first episode.
You're ready to override the dog.
I would have overridden. I can't deal with anything happening to animals, and so in that point it was just like, whatever will save the dog, I will choose this option. But the rest of the time I was largely like going with my gut, I guess.
I was doing kind of a 50-50. So with basically, if it was the scenes with like, oh, we're in imminent danger, I was just like, let's try and get out of danger. Like, let's not get shot. Like, but in the earlier scenes where he was, interacting with his daughter and his wife and his father, where everything was a lot less tense, and I had the time to think like, okay, how do I see this guy? Like, what do I think is going on? Like, it was easy for me to try and role play then, rather than like, oh Lord, he got a gun. Who cares about the role play? Save yourself.
That makes sense. Makes perfect sense. I like that explanation.
Yeah. It's kind of that was also my approach to it, but I admit some of them were kind of me just being curious what would happen.
Yeah, that's valid too.
And seeing if other people would follow, basically. But nothing that I was so curious about that I would override anything just yet. But we'll see what happens. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I agree that the short time frame definitely doesn't give you much time to get in character and think in that character's mindset, especially since we just met these characters and we don't know them very well yet. So it was mostly mostly me in the high tense stuff. As the game goes on, we'll see. Maybe we'll get more into Vince's head or something, and that'll be very interesting.
And Paul. I think Paul is the other character that we're controlling at the moment. Who knows how many characters we end up controlling, like overall? But I think. Wait, was it Paul or
Jay?
Jay?
Jay.
I think Jay.
Sorry,
Jay
Paul
is
was
the teen.
Jay's the teen. Paul
Yeah.
was the other person running the store with Joyce.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Okay. So it's Jay. Okay, we also have Jay so far. And then Kevin, how about you? How have you been choosing?
Yeah, I think for me it's mostly just based off of my own like quick like what would I do? And yeah, I think it's just too fast for me right now.
To roleplay, yeah.
Yeah, to roleplay, yeah.
Yeah. And then Sam, I know that you're not connected right now, but hopefully you'll be able to join us next time. But hypothetically, how do you think you would be making these decisions?
So for me, it's kind of the opposite. I can roleplay when those high tense stuff, but when they were doing like the investigative stuff, that's kind of where I pop in. I'm like, okay, I need to be smart here. Even though this character's like, he's never robbed a house before in his life. I'm like, what is he gonna do? So like, I think it's kind of it's the opposite where it's sort of like what people were saying. It's like you have like this image of this character in your head, and then this is how you're slowly building that character in your head is through those choices. So those are sort of easier for me, but the stuff where it's like investigative or like the quick times where it's just like you have to avoid getting bit by a dog, that's like those are really quick for me. I just try to pick like the easiest option to stay alive. But it's interesting, I guess, because I was just thinking about this place because you guys all heard the voice acting, so you guys got like a more personal like story, I think, that I kind of missed out on. I'm just reading the subtitles and seeing the expressions. So, but I think it's credit to this game that I still have like this idea of like who those characters are, just based off the literal subtitles and the expressions for the art.
Right.
I'm still connected to these characters even though I can't hear them.
It's like reading a comic book, right?
Yeah.
Or a graphic novel. Yeah. I'm glad that you still experience that.
You give the characters voices in your head. This is what they sound like to you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they tell a lot of their personality is shown by actions instead of talking.
For me, the way that I've been going, it's kind of a complicated mix of what everybody has said. So for me, it's whatever reaches my decision fastest would help, whatever I can get to fast, because sometimes even in the slower parts, like when you're just making casual conversation, it actually might be faster for me to separate myself from the conversation and just jump into what do I think that character would say, because sometimes I see all the choices and I need more time to think about what I would say, but I'd be like, I'm feeling in this moment Vince would say that, or that Jay would say that in that moment. So yeah, it just changes all the time, like whether it's either me or whether it's role playing. And very often I also go the Roma route, which is sometimes I'm just curious, like I'm really curious what other books are in this bookshelf. So I was like I figured there was probably a shelf, a safe, maybe somewhere else behind that painting, but I'm like, I really want to see what the other books are, so that's what I did.
Which, funnily enough, was where the safe was.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I almost overridden the bookshelf, like immediately, like as the second choice, but I wasn't sure if I would be able to keep all of my overrides. So.
Well, you know what I wonder now, because like you say about curiosity, I wonder if you had decided as Jay to mess with the sheriff's like fridge, if he would have done something to the cola that he drank.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that would have given it away.
Cool.
That would have given
That's
it away
interesting.
straight away, much like looking at
That's
the wallet would have
nice.
given it away straight away.
There was so many ways it could have gone wrong.
Yeah, you're right. It
And then the
does
stupid
feel
fuck
like
face.
it does feel like our choices definitely matter. Like 100%. It does feel like that.
There are moments where you can just kind of see how, like, I think somebody mentioned at the point in which Joyce was taped up, and the cop came in, and it's like, oh, I can see that this would have played out differently if we hadn't have made that choice.
Yep.
Yeah. So for those of us who did decide to override things, I'm curious. Some of you already answered it, but I'm curious, like, why did you feel so strongly
Kevin?
about this topic? Starting
Why?
with Kevin. Kevin, what was it about that truck? What was it about that truck that you just felt so passionate about?
I just really wanted to see how she would respond, like, to the answer. It's like what has she really seen with this truck that's up on a pole or wherever it was? Just to get a grasp of like the initial character,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Were you satisfied? I mean, did you have any regrets for, leaning
no
into
regrets.
that truck? No regrets.
No regrets whatsoever.
You got what you wanted out of that. Great.
Yeah.
So I overrided, Joey
That's what,
overrided. Hark
that's what
overrided.
Kevin's playing for. He's playing for the plot arc of the truck. He wants to
Yeah.
see how the truck evolves over the
Yeah,
story.
Exactly.
Chekhov's truck.
So wait. It was
It was Kevin,
it was a battle
me,
between
and
me, the three of us, right? We're
No,
overriding each
I
other.
overrided to do the thing where I
Oh.
said that I wasn't scared, but I've already
Right, you
explained
weren't
that, so it's
scared.
you two.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Joey, you overrid and I overrid. So I explain your override, I guess.
Well, I'm thinking because I noticed that my override was purely subconscious. I can't remember the decision anymore.
You don't. The decision was whether to inform the cop that we needed help.
Yeah,
It was either tell
that's
the
what it
cop
was.
help or
Yeah.
just keep it quiet.
Right.
That was the override.
It's because
Do you
again, I figured that if that cop would know, we don't know how the cop would react, and the fact that we don't have that information, made me think this is a wild card. If we activate that wild card, who knows what he'll do, and that could, ruin everything. If we don't tell him, we have all the information we have, and we can
Yeah.
work further with that.
Well,
Yeah.
before Hark answers, I all of a sudden have a theory that maybe the fact that we grabbed the gun was a good thing because the shotgun blast went off, and that cop is still outside.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't left yet.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. So then, if he was involved, it may not necessarily be because we tipped him off. It's because he heard the gun. That's a good point.
Yeah. But now the cop was already tipped off because Hark made the decision to tip him off. So he was already calling for backup, and now he's just heard a shotgun blast from inside the
So
diner.
Yeah.
So he'll react differently.
I wonder if, because right before that, he had found Joyce's charm on the floor. I wonder if we hadn't have said anything, because his suspicion had already been roused at that point, whether it made us look bad, perhaps even complicit, if, we hadn't said something.
That's a good point too.
Yeah.
The reason why I felt strongly and overrode is because I felt that if I was trying to metagame a little bit, because I did mention this, I said, oh, if this cop gets involved, he's dead, is basically what I thought. Because I, again, as somebody who's played games like this or have read stories like this, that's almost always happens when you try to involve somebody to get you out of this situation, that they'll try to help you and then they die. So I was trying to not metagame and try to play this more realistically, again, of what I would do. And so in my headspace, okay, cops are supposed to be trained to handle these situations, like these really hostile situations, and I have not had any training. So I figured, I would put my trust in whatever they think they need to do with the information that I give them. Like, I will trust that if I say, help me, that they're not gonna, they'll do whatever it is they can to keep everybody safe in however way they can. So,
Like
so that
Sam,
was why
I believe was the
overrated.
cop's name. Sam reacted in the correct way. He tried to make it off that
He tried to, right.
he was just making a joke. He said, I'm going outside to call back up. And now laugh like I told
Pretend.
you a joke. And then he walked
Yeah.
outside and he laughed at the
And-
fake joke. So
And I feel like that would actually realistically happen in real life. I feel like that's what they would do and say, and I think so. Yeah, that's basically the door was open, and I just had to walk through it, hoping that it was the right decision. So that's why I did that.
we shall find out.
We shall find out.
It
I mean,
does.
and-
It made us lock in the gun decision as well. I think
Yeah.
because if we didn't react then, and he took his wife, we knew that the cop was already involved. So defending his family turned into If my wife goes with them and they know that the cops are after them because we tipped the cop off, then the wife is
Yeah.
dead. So that's
Yeah.
the only action he had left was try to do it himself.
You were about to say something, Hannah, I think?
It's not spoiler, but an achievement came up that said that we had alerted Big Sam without raising Tyler's suspicion. We got an achievement for that. So that means that there was obviously a way that we could have still alerted the cop, but that Tyler would have been tipped off that we had done that. So
Well,
again,
that's
that's just another branch.
I feel
You
good
can
about
just
that.
tell them. I'm pretty sure the two options were yes, he knows, and no, he doesn't know.
The way
So-
they would have known that the cops were tipped off was if she would have yelled. She wasn't taped off.
Oh, I see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's also a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple ways.
We didn't-
Multiple ways.
Let's talk more about the characters. I obviously everybody's favorite is the middle Holt kid. The middle Holt kid is the one that
Yeah, absolutely.
peed into the lemonade. Everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
I hope he lives. No.
He lives Sneaky again.
What are your thoughts on Jay and or Vince? What are your thoughts on Jay? I think we've been talking a lot about Vince, but I don't think anyone's talked much about Jay yet. So I'm just curious if anyone had any.
Well, to be
feelings
fair,
on-
we've not really made any massive character building choices with Jay,
True.
aside from maybe like the whole thing with the sheriff's wife.
Yes.
But that sort of felt like that was what he was going to do anyway. He doesn't seem the kind of guy who would have, pushed her out of the wheelchair or done something like that just to stop her from ringing the bell. But it sort of feels like Jay hasn't had a chance to shine while we've had a lot more time with Vince,
Yeah,
I feel, in
Vince.
this episode, if you want to call it that. So I think Vince he obviously has a very nice voice because it's Elias Tufexis. So there is that. There's the fact that he is moving state to go to Missouri to St. Louis with his wife, and there was a mention of a settlement from I think he said he used to fix 747s or something, so he used to be an aeronautic engineer, but he's no longer an aeronautic engineer. So there's some background there as to why he's in this situation, as to why they have to move to Missouri. So we'll find out why that is, I assume, in the future. But there's a lot of background there that we don't know. But with Jay, it's kind of like, oh, our dad owes someone money, and we're stealing money to try and pay off that debt, which is which is less interesting to me. Which is why I kind of like Vince a lot more, because he seems more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. So like with Vince, he's like the father figure. He's making all these big choices for his family. But when you go to this kid, it just feels like we're following along, and he's being dragged along to this thing he doesn't want to do. So I think that's kind of the difference I'm seeing with like the play styles. Is we're following this kid, and we're just trying to get him through without like the worst possible outcome for himself. And we're seeing that there's clearly like this. He doesn't want to do things, but his brothers are kind of forcing him to. Versus like Vance, it's very much I have to protect my family. This is the situation I'm in. It's super hostile. And then the other one is passive. He's just watching all of this terrible stuff happen. And so I kind of like that we feel that shift, like when we're playing the two different characters. We feel in charge and we feel like we're decisive versus the other one, it's, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like, this is terrible.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you. That's a great observation. Love that. Other thoughts?
The thing that I found interesting about Jay is, like Sam said, like he's more of a passive observer being dragged along, but also his reaction to being dragged along is kind of interesting. I mean, he's in the back of a truck, they're going to rob a guy, and he's listening to music and watching the birds. And then during the robbery, when his brother is peeing into, lemonade and smoking cigars, taking shit for himself, he instead steals a bird watching book that he's like, oh, this is cool. Like he seems like a very gentle person who has unfortunately found himself with these two asshat brothers. And like I kind of hope we see him grow into himself a little bit more. I really hope that we see him kind of, say, no, you two are leading me down the wrong path. I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to go do my own thing and watch some birds. I really hope we see that growth with him.
Yeah.
What was the older brother name? What was the oldest brother's name again?
Tyler?
Tyler?
Tyler.
See, I don't think Tyler's an asshat. I just think he's trying his best to protect his two brothers, and the middle brother is just a dick.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's obviously family stuff that we haven't got into yet. There's been there were references throughout, about that they needed the money and that I can't remember the names, but the character we were controlling wanted to use the money for a family, and that was there was always this underlying kind of subtext of they feel that they need to do this.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to explore that in kind of future episodes.
Other people? Go ahead, Kevin.
I do like a weird undertone is that little girl wanted to watch the Nature Channel, and then that guy picked up the bird book, and I'm like,
Oh.
they will probably get along if
interesting.
they talk about
I feel like they would
nature.
get along. Yeah. My brother shot your mom, but
Sorry
we can talk about
that,
the birds.
but you like
Sorry
these
about
birds?
that. Yeah.
Again, I didn't know if that was just an Arizona thing, because everybody just loved watching birds over there.
Arizonians down in the comments.
Roma, do you have any feelings about either Jay or Vince? Any thoughts about them?
Like it's been brought up about Jay kind of feeling kind of seeming like he's being strung along for this ride, and part of me is very curious about this whole family dynamic that is going on. Like obviously he has an older brother who seems to be kind of taking charge. Makes me think either maybe their father's either dead or absent at the moment, and then he's got the middle brother who they say he's been in juvie, and then you've got Jay who doesn't seem to really fit in with either one of them. So I am very curious, like how they ended up the way they are and how Jay ended up the way he is. So I am hoping that we get some background about that. I think like I definitely felt the same way as most other people. I found Vince's the choices I made with Vince felt like they were carrying a little bit more weight, while the choices I made with Jay were kind of like, okay, well, he clearly doesn't want to do any of this, and it feels like he's just going through the motions with this. At least that was my thing. So it's like I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what else is there to Jay. I think there's definitely more than we've learned so far. So I'm interested to find out more about him.
Yeah.
Something interesting though is that I don't think that this is his first robbery. The questions that he asked, the way he handled himself during the robbery, it seemed like he has some experience with this already, Jay. So I think there might be some robbery dynamic already there in that whole family.
But probably not by his choice.
Not probably, yeah.
Again, probably not by his choice.
But probably with education, I guess. Just being part of his family and just his upbringing. I think he is a natural robber from a natural robber family.
And what was his name? Was it Tim or Jim? Was Vince's dad's name?
Jim.
Jim also seems very odd because he talks about his son like he's known him his whole life, and then it's revealed that he was absent for 30 years, which is very very interesting dynamic, because then you see you see Tim try to be proud of his son when he does certain things and says certain things to the two brothers when they're trying to hold them up, but then at other times you can tell that Jim wishes he was 30 years younger and he could do it himself.
Go ahead.
So the father figure. I'm sorry, I'm bad
Jim.
with names.
Jim.
Jim, is that Jim? So as in not the grandfather, but the
Vince.
Oh, Vince.
Yeah, Vince. I don't know if anyone else picked up on it, but I was picking up that there was some marital difficulties there in the scenes at the beginning. Lines like, that our daughter heard us fighting again. And there just seemed to be, again, I don't know if it was just me being very sensitive to it, but there just seemed to be a little bit of tension, like they weren't acting naturally with each other. So I wonder if there's kind of something there, some either history or some kind of ongoing issues that they're having.
Yeah.
Well, there is the fact that they're moving, I assume, across country, and they're also doing the whole thing with with Vince's current employment issue, and the fact that Jim's dying is a thing as well. They mentioned that too. So there's obviously a lot of stress going on. So the fact that they're fighting over something it's to be understood. I don't even know if it's a marital thing, like if they're actively struggling with that, or if it's just the fact that there's all this other stuff that's happening around them that's causing the stress.
I did notice that Michelle seemed surprised that Vince backed her in the car when we had the option of saying, hey, Michelle, stay out of it, or Jim. And we obviously told Jim stay out of it. She seemed kind of surprised by that. So
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good catch. To share my feelings about Jim and Jay, or Vince and Jay, I relate to them both pretty quickly because for Vince, hopefully it's pretty obvious. Like as a dad myself, I have a family and I have kids, and so a lot of the things that I'm selecting, especially during the high tension scenes, is just what would I do, like for my family if it were my family. Jay, I think this is true just for most of these types of decision-based games. I really am very overprotective of Jay right now because I see the situation he's in. He seems to me like he's a genuinely good kid who's just in a very rough situation. And I'm trying to guide him through this as sort of like a guardian angel type of thing. And maybe not necessarily choosing the choices that I think he in character would necessarily choose, but the ones that I'm pushing him, nudging him towards, because I think that's the best decision for him to actually make. I would love to see a future scene where he actually stands up to his brothers, like once and for all, and just takes a stand and just tells them what he wants to do instead of them telling him what to do. Who knows? But I would applaud like him if he ever did something like that. So that would be kind of cool.
The Jim and Paul interaction.
Yes.
Where Paul was walking out, Jim was walking in, and Paul was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, your face looks familiar." It's like, "Nah, I look like Clint Eastwood." Like, I'm just like, there's some history there. He's not.
Yeah.
He's. Oh God, how am I putting this? He's been to this location before. Jim has 100% been.
Interesting.
That is something that
Yeah.
does come up as well while they're coming towards the diner. Where like Jim sees something or something happens and Vince goes, "Are you okay?" and Jim immediately responds with, "Yeah, I'm fine."
This has a high levels of Chekhov's gun in it. We're gonna see that later on, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
My point was just kind of graphical. I don't know if that happened with anybody else. There were a few occasions in the game where there was a third option, like to the right to the side, that I didn't actually see.
Yes.
So there were a few times where I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that third option was
Or
there."
it comes later, maybe.
There were instructions or a hint box that said explore the scene to find other decisions.
Oh.
So they'll throw up like two choices at first, but then if you move your mouse around, like so for example, with the scene with the sheriff's wife, they didn't show stop the wheelchair immediately. If you hovered over the wheelchair, then it said stop the wheelchair. And I think that's really, really cool.
Okay.
So again, it adds to that you have to stay active. You can't be passive on this. Like when a decision comes up, you have to like sort of move your mouse around and see if you can find other choices.
Okay.
So I thought that was really cool.
That's probably why you got the Explorer for finding the
'cause
hotspots.
I was looking around. Yeah. So with the 2 minutes that we have left, very quickly, does anyone want to give predictions as to like what the outcome is immediately in the next scene? Is it going to be a funeral? Did we actually shoot Tyler? Do they end up shooting somebody else? Like, I'm just curious, what are your predictions before we move?
I think the
to
cop's
next?
going to come back in and the whole scene's going to get blown up because all of a sudden there's the cop there, there's Vince pointing the shotgun at Tyler, the middle brother's got the pistol on Michelle, the cop probably is pointing his gun at the middle brother, things are
Okay.
getting really. I think things are going to pop in, and we're going to immediately either get loads and loads of action, or there's going to be a cut, and we're going to go back in time and see how they ended up
Oh.
here.
Gotcha. Just keep the cliffhanger hanging
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I think the gun is empty.
You think the gun is empty?
Oh.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Awkward. That's awkward.
Yes.
Don't know what I'm gonna do.
They do that in some of these narrative games, though, don't they? And then the character remembers that if you'd have had a bullet, you would have shot them, and that affects things later.
Yeah,
Yes.
that affects things. Anyone else have any other theories before we end? No. Okay.